Mr. Chairman, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized.
I would like to thank Chairman Calvert for the warm birthday wishes, but I'd also like to thank the chairman and his staff for their open and collaborative approach, and the wonderful staff on the Democratic side who will be helping me this evening. This subcommittee has had a challenging portfolio of issues, and I commend the chairman's effort to find solutions in another yet difficult budget year. This year's subcommittee held 14 budget hearings, 4 which involved Native American Indians and Native Alaskans. The testimony provided by the 209 witnesses clearly articulated the serious need for programs and services underneath this subcommittee's jurisdiction. Unfortunately, the FY 2017 subcommittee allocation is $64 million less than last year's enacted levels. This means the needs of many important programs vital to protecting our nation's natural and cultural resources will not be met, as they far outpace the stagnant allocation. Within the constrained top-line number, difficult choices had to be made, and sadly, the majority cut important programs to protect America's public and conserve our natural resources. The most significant programmatic cut is in the Environmental Protection Agency, which was slashed by $164 million. This cut will impact the agency's ability to protect human health and the health of our environment, and to ensure clean air and clean water for our families and future generations. This year, the critical need for the EPA was unmistakable as our nation watched a tragedy unfold in Flint, Michigan, where children were poisoned by lead in their drinking water. So I find it difficult to reconcile the cuts recommended in this bill with the public health challenges faced by this country. Flint is an accumulation of years of weakening the EPA through budget cuts and over-reliance on state agencies to manage federal environmental laws. All of our communities deserve and expect their government to provide clean water and basic public health protections. Especially in light of Flint, I must strongly object to the majority's decision to reduce funding for clean water by $394 million, which is 28% below the 2016 enacted level. Clean water and safe drinking water go hand in hand, and you cannot have one without the other. The residents of Flint were betrayed by their state government, and to this day, they still do not have safe drinking water available from their tap. The levels provided in this bill for the state revolving funds are inadequate to deal with the decaying infrastructure in our nation, no less the emergency in Flint, Michigan. In addition to the irresponsible cuts to the EPA, I'm also troubled by the 30% reduction to the endangered species listing. Reducing funding for this program opens the door for litigation, delays protecting and recovering vulnerable species. The bill also shortchanges the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which since its inception has protected conservation and recreation land in every state and is supported by tens of thousands of state and local projects. Yet, despite its merit, this bill slashes the Land and Water Conservation Fund program by a third. Despite this bill's shortcomings in the environmental protection and resource and conservation area, I do, however, want to express how very proud I am of this subcommittee's nonpartisan approach to addressing the issues facing our Native American brothers and sisters. And I am pleased that this bill recommends an increase of $343 million for programs critical to Indian country. However, I would be remiss if I did not point out, even with this increase, the funding for Native American programs is still $172 million less than the administration's request. Native American and Alaskan Native populations face substantial hardships when compared to total populations. They have poorer health, lower earnings, and higher rates of poverty. So we must continue to work together with our efforts to support these communities. And while I applaud this bill for maintaining our commitment to provide Native American students with safe schools that are conducive to learning and fully funding contract support costs so that tribes are not penalized for exercising their self-determination rights. Another bright spot in this bill is the continued support for the National Park Centennial Initiative. The bill recommends $80 million for the Centennial, which will strengthen the foundation for visitor services and make essential infrastructure investments. And I'm also pleased that an additional $3 million is provided to the Civil Rights Initiative grant program, funding that's included for grants and aid to historical Black colleges and universities. I especially would like to thank the chairman for working with me to resurrect the Save America's Treasures program. This program funds and preserves nationally significant sites, structures, and artifacts. I am very proud that working together we were able to restart this program, and I will work diligently with the chairman to make sure it's included in the final bill. But unfortunately, this bill neglects to act on many other opportunities to wisely invest in taxpayers' dollars. So I am frustrated that the majority has effectively left $1.2 billion on the table by not adopting the common sense reforms championed by Chairman Simpson in his wildlife disaster funding bill. Every member of the Interior Subcommittee is a co-sponsor of that bill, Democrat and Republican alike. Yet once again, the majority has balked and cites committee jurisdiction. However, those jurisdictional issues did not hinder the majority, including dozens of harmful legislative writers. I must express my concern and disappointment with the 38 partisan writers in this bill. The number is outrageous, and the nature of the writers included, to me, is pandering to special interests at the expense of the public good. For example, the bill contains a provision that would reverse safety improvements developed following the Deepwater Horizon tragedy. 11 lives were lost in that explosion. So I must express my clear dismay that this bill puts the profits of big oil companies ahead of worker safety. The veto bait provisions that seek to turn back protections for endangered species, restrict control of greenhouse gas emissions, undermine clean water and clean air protections do not belong in this bill. And I acknowledge and I appreciate the efforts that have been made to accommodate Democratic priorities in this bill. However, I still not can support this bill as it's drafted. Despite my current opposition, it is my clear intention to continue working with Chairman Calvert through this year's appropriation process to produce a responsible bill that both parties can support. And you have my word on that, Chairman. And with that, Mr. Chair, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from Minnesota reserves.